I'd just like to introduce our speaker. We're very privileged to have Chris James from Northlink Executive Director, and Chris is going to present on the recently completed Future Workforce Report, Where the Jobs Are report, produced by the National Institute of Economics and Industry Research. And over the last 15 years, Northlink has delivered a number of regional industry research reports, which have been the go-to resource for workforce development in the northern region of Melbourne. So we're very privileged. And Chris, welcome.
We had a look at what the key industries are in the north, and a bit like the 2015 report, healthcare is the largest industry, but that's becoming larger, given the ageing demographic and the increased emphasis on healthcare and personal care in our society. Manufacturing has declined slightly, but not by a lot. Still a very strong industry for the north, and you've got construction as well, and logistics, which is very important in the north, given the airport, the freeway network, and the Melbourne wholesale market, among other things. Key industry and a growing industry. In terms of industry needs, we've had that conversation for a while about soft skills versus technical skills in the eyes of employers, and a lot of the feedback we get from our industry partners is that a lot of employers, particularly for less skilled occupations, would say, look, just give me someone who has a work ethic, who's reliable, who'll communicate with their peers, who is resilient, etc., and will train them on the job. So there's a fair bit of that happening now. Obviously, at the more senior levels, employers are looking for an element of technical expertise, but they do want to add their own tailored workplace flavour or expertise to what has been trained. So there is that strong piece that's ongoing. It was there pre-COVID, but it is still certainly ongoing. Manufacturing, despite media messages saying it's dead, certainly isn't, and crying out for people. Some manufacturing subsectors, though, haven't been particularly good at promoting themselves, and we're working on that with the caravan industry, which is in partnership with the Caravan Industry Victoria about employment program with them at the moment, and advertising that to potential employees, especially young people. I suppose a regional need is the need to elevate precincts as clusters for higher level jobs. We find a lot of people are leaving Melbourne's north, particularly for the higher tech jobs, and coming back at night with problems with public transport and getting around, and desires to work closer to home. Elevating precincts like the Latrobe National Employment Innovation Cluster, Epping, Broadmeadows, Beveridge, Cloverton, Brunswick Design District, etc., is more and more important in terms of actually locating some of those jobs where people live. Of course, things like transport, high-speed broadband are important, and we do see visitor economy in particular is important to take in some of those entry-level jobs as well, and it's important to look at reviving that sector in the north. Not surprisingly, high level of bachelor's degrees, and that keeps rising given demographic changes, particularly in the north. Lower share of less skilled jobs, but there still are a lot of jobs for less skilled people out there, but less so than there used to be. Evidence that we do lack, to some extent, some of those tech jobs that are needed, that people are able to do them, but they leave the region to do them. They go to the CBD or the inner southeast to do those jobs, and there's a good argument for building up precincts and clusters to try and retain some of those jobs in the north. Entrepreneurialism, extremely important in the current environment. This has been happening since pre-COVID. Younger generations are much more inclined to want to start their own businesses, and that needs to be supported. In terms of education and its relationship with industry, things that we are doing that came from the last report, like student placement programs, are quite important in bridging the gap between education and industry. The LENZ do good student placement programs at the secondary level. We do them at tertiary level. Industry shouldn't necessarily assume ready-made employees exist. Particularly if they're recruiting people from disadvantaged cohorts, they do need to expect that things mightn't be smooth at the beginning, and they do need to have patience. That's what we advise, and things often come good with appropriate supports being put in place. I mentioned micro-credentials before. Employability, very important, and understand the education department here in Victoria is taking fairly significant steps in that space with some of its initiatives like Head Start, and of course the LENZ do play a very important role there. Career education, and David Kennedy has said this ad nauseum, that young people do need a better line of sight when they're at school on what the key jobs are in particular regions. And in the north it might be logistics, it might be food and beverage manufacturing. That does need to be imparted, in our view, at school, so younger people have the information to make informed choices. Literacy and numeracy, obviously extremely important, more and more so in today's workplace. It's becoming more digitised, and there needs to be more recognition in our view, and as acknowledged in the report, about the important role of TAFE and its skilling abilities and capacities in regions who might live in the north, not wanting to go all the way to the CBD, but wanting to go to an office in the suburb where they live or near where they live. So that's being baked into developer considerations. We're likely to have a higher GRP growth rate and population growth rate, despite immigration being down than the rest of Melbourne, so that will drive growth. In terms of sectors that will increase, healthcare and social assistance, professional, scientific, technical services, logistics, that's consistent with what was happening pre-COVID, education as well. The economists think manufacturing will drop in terms of job numbers. That assumes no additional actions to arrest that. They predicted construction will decline largely because of economic conditions we're starting to see now persisting. Also a gradual shift to a more professional workforce, as has been occurring. And we do have some occupation data, and at the top, the occupations that are growing are generally health, IT and education, and those declining are some of the more traditional manufacturing occupations.